Welcome, I am MP Misra, faculty, School of Computer and Information Sciences, IGNOU. In this session, we will discuss about the concept of objects and classes in context of C++ programming. As you know, C++ is an object oriented programming language, and the whole development or whole programming exercises what we do moves around the concept of object and classes. So, the concept of object and classes is very important concept in terms of object oriented programming and per se learning C++ programming language. If we know the concept of object and classes, why object and classes are there, and obviously, when we will learn this, we will try to recall whatever concept we are having in programming that we have learned in our C programming in the previous semester. So, with that we will try to compare, with that we will try to see that how actually object oriented programming is different and how the concept of object and classes makes us more comfortable in terms of problem solving tool. So, with this we start our discussion. So, topic is objects and classes. The contents which we will discuss, you can see on slide. The concept of object we will discuss, concept of class we will discuss, and then we will very quickly try to see some basic properties of object oriented programming, and more emphasis we will give in this discussion about access specifiers, and that access specifier talks about how actually we are going to shift our thinking, shift our important concentration from implementation of program to taking care of the data. So, with this and we will then try to see some examples, how actually those examples depict the concepts which we have discussed. Now, if we talk about object oriented programming, so we can see an object in terms of collection of data and its operation as an object. Then data whatever we are discussing is local to that object, because we are talking about collection and data in one go. Data is encapsulated within object and not accessible outside. So, these are few things which are very important for our consideration. The objects only know how to interact with each other with the help of the operations, because we are talking object in terms of data and operations both. So, objects will not communicate to each other with the help of any data communication directly. They will communicate to each other with the help of what? Operations. For example, I take myself as a object teacher. So, I am communicating with you by speaking. If you have to communicate to me, you will speak and that will be coming to me. You will not directly come to me and give something. So, that speaking is a kind of operation that we are performing. So, we are thinking in that way now. We are not thinking that the data is directly passed from one to another. Another is, if you are as a customer of a bank, you are having your account. So, your account is a kind of object you are having there. So, you are requesting for some operation on that particular, and the another object will take that operation and will perform some activity and it will return the result to you. So, it is not communication in terms of data, it is communication in terms of operation. We will see more examples very quickly. Now, by these things what is advantage? We are thinking in this way. One advantage is there is very rare chance of accidental modification. Why? Because data and objects both we are talking in a collection or they are encapsulated. Encapsulated, do you know capsule? What is capsule? A capsule is something which is wrapped up from outside, some eatable material, and inside that you are having some chemicals or some medicine component inside it, but from outside of the capsule you are not allowed to see what actually inside that capsule is having some property, and that property is what? How actually the chemical are inside kept, what are different characteristics of those chemical inside, that depict the characteristics of that capsule. So, that analogy we can take, and that capsulation or that kind of capsule we can think about every object. So, any object we can think in terms of a capsule, and that capsule is having something inside, but what is inside is not permitted to see. What is permitted is what property that capsule is having, right. Easier maintenance. So, we are talking in terms of object and we have to modify some object, then definitely we will think about that object or internal implementation of that object and modify it. It will not have any effect outside. Similarly, reusability also we may think, if some object is already existing or created, that object can be used at several places. You do not have to create that object again. And high level of modularity, because every component in the program we are trying to implement in terms of object. So, these all objects are a different kind of module. So, there is a higher modularity, and obviously dependency is less in terms of object will communicate with each other with the help of certain operations or methods. So, we are not concentrating that how actually the complexity of the different kind of invoking of the object and other things will be there. We are concentrating about the properties of the object and how actually those properties will communicate to each other. In CRISP we can say again, object is a collection of operations which share a state. One more term here coming, that is state. State means what? State means object is having certain data, that data will be having some value. So, at a particular moment what is value assigned to the data variables of that particular object will decide its state. For example, if we are having one account available with us, if we are depositing some amount in the account, the balance of the account is bound to change. So, before depositing the amount in the account, the state is different, but after depositing the amount in the account, state will change and it will reflect the current value associated with it. Number of transaction will change, one deposit it will show, the account balance will change, the date on which the account is currently being updated, that will change. So, these all things make one state, right. So, every object is having its own state and that state keep on change in the activities and operation. If some operation we are taking place in which the data value of the object is changing, then state will change. And if we are talking about operation, then operation we can think in terms of two things. One is declaring of the operation, another is how the operation is actually implemented to perform that particular task, right. So, declaration and then implementation. Interface means what? That operation which we are talking about, operation is obviously nothing we can think in terms of having some procedures which are written, basically algorithm. If we are talking about any object, we talked about capsule, we can think object as a capsule, we have talked about that object can be thought of as an entity, then we talked about anything which is logically or physically existing can be think that as an object. Then if another perspective or another kind of thinking we give to the object, we can think object in two perspective. One is how as an external entity or external party I am looking on an object. For example, how I am looking as a medicine for that particular capsule. So, it is a medicine I am looking. I know that if I take one capsule, it is having this property, it will be performing this operation. Another is how actually that capsule has been implemented. Okay. So, there are two things, one is outside view, another is inside view. Again message means communicating from one to another. We talk to our friends by passing the message. I am talking to you, it is a kind of message passing from one to another. So, one object is passing message, another receptor object is receiving it. It may be if I pass one query to you, that query will be what? I have property that I can generate here a query and I ask to you, and you have property that you will respond to that query. It means both the object are compatible to communicate with each other with the help of this property. Similarly, you are having property to raise a question and maybe I will respond to it. It means that we are compatible with each other to communicate in terms of that property. So, it is essential, we cannot communicate to each other until unless we are having property. That property is a kind of method, a kind of implementation of the certain objective. Instance variable, when we are having one object, then obviously that object will have certain property, and that property is what? Data, and that data is called instance variable. So, there are two type of members or variables one object may have. One is data, other is operation. This we were having in our C program also. In C program, how we were having data and operation? We were having data somewhere global, somewhere we were having function, inside that function we were having local data. This was the approach. Maybe we were having more than one functions, and these functions were having its own prototype returning something. So, this was our approach of problem solving in structured approach. But now we are talking about a different approach, and that approach is talking about what? Data and operation both are encapsulated. It means what? Data and operation both are together, and how to access this data? From outside? Only through operation, that is message, right. This is also known as interface, this is also known as message passing. Message passing take place through interfaces, and data is modified, altered, these operations only. It is not that data is accessible from outside and it is open to all. So, just see the basic concept which come here is that more emphasis on this particular aspect rather than implementation. Implementation, obviously here is implementation and similarly here is also implementation, but by keeping associated data together, we are giving more emphasis on data. So, whenever now we will think about our problem solving, what we will think about is, we will think about what are the data component around which we are going to perform operation, and then we will think about what are the operation, what are the data which are associated with each other, how we can make collection of it, and when we will think about making collection of that, we will think in terms of identification of objects. Identification. This is the first step we have to take when we are going as a C++ programmer for solving our problem. Basically, what we have to do is we have to identify that what are the different objects which are expected in my program to perform operations, and identify those objects. Then obviously, some formal mechanism are there to create those objects and use those objects. But main emphasis is that, let us say, if in a classroom scenario we are discussing here, teacher student object is there, then teacher is there, then many more. If we are taking that, whiteboard is there, marker is there. Okay. If we are recording this lecture, we may think about other objects also. Camera is there, then the people expert who are managing camera, they are there. So, now we are identifying different objects which are being used for solving one specific problem. That problem is to make this lecture possible. Now, in terms of a student of the programming, if we think that whether this way of thinking of problem solving is better or the previous way in C programming was simple, obviously we will conclude that this way is more convenient to us. Why it is convenient? Because this is the natural way of thinking about the activities, operations in our daily life. We can very easily make up what are different objects. These different objects are having their assigned duties, they are having their defined role to perform, and they are performing the operation. Now, if we write simple programs, let us say, for object oriented programming, then how we will think about writing that program? We will think about, let us say we are taking 2 points P1, P2, and we are trying to find out distance between them. Then what we will think? We will think these two are the point around which our operations are going to perform. It means these are seen as object. What this object is talking about? This object is talking about some data and some operation. So, what data may be associated with it? Data will be associated with it, its coordinate, it means x value and y value. Every point is expected to have that. Now, if I am saying that I am having 4 objects, let us say P1, P2, P3, P4. So, P1 will have some x and y, let us say 2, 6, 8, 3, any value we can take randomly, 10, 5. So, these are representing different points in the coordinate. No, in your plane if you draw a, you will find these points somewhere lying here or there, right. It means what? It means we are having different object and these objects are having some associated state. Let us say we are making a system in which we are talking about movement of certain object from one point to another point. It means what? It means the state will change, the position of point is supposed to change. Many applications you may think about where the point movement or point coordinate system being applied and the position of the object is changing. Many gaming application you see, no, in that movement is taking place, the point on which that particular object is represented right now is shifting. But you can think that one another object we are thinking, if we are talking about some type of game or some other application, in that many point objects are applied. In that way, you can think about complex system in which different kind of objects are used or associated with. As we give example of this particular class itself, that in this class we have seen that there are different objects and they are performing their operations. So, similarly, in any system, in any problem solving, as a student we see that we are having some object associated with that and then in that particular object we are performing, or those objects basically participating in performing the operations. So, you can take any example, for example, find the average marks of the student in a class, display the attendance list of the student in a class. These all are the simple things which you generally try to start with your programming or you try to solve these small problems. So, in that what you will think now? As a C++ programmer, you will not think in terms of that what should be the global variable, what should be the method which will be functions which will be used. What you will think now that I have to think in terms of what will be the object in which certain data will be there and certain operations will be, right. So, now we are talking about data and operations together. When objects interact with each other, they interact with certain kind of message passing or certain kind of operations, and when data change its value, state of the object change, right. And one more thing, of our importance is that encapsulated. Encapsulated, so we cannot see from outside, but there are provisions through which we can have certain level of access on different kind of data, and that we will discuss in the section of access specifier. And let us see few more slides, then we will proceed further. You can see on screen object point is shown here, and it is having two variables or two data member associated with it, that is x and y, and two operations get x, get y. Suppose we have to find the distance between these 2 points, then what we will do? We have to define one more operation, that will be distance, and complexity level will increase, because either we have to pass 2 point as an argument to it, or we have to invoke the distance calculation method on one point and pass another point as argument to it. Now, if we talk about operation specifically, what are different category of operation? We can think of 3 category of operation. One is, there are some methods or some operation which are doing internal management activity. For example, let us say if account is being managed in the bank, so interest calculation operation will be automatically taking place after certain period of time. So, that is internal management, and that kind of operations are known as manager operation. Another is modifier. Modifier means those operations which will perform certain activity on the basis of that state of object will change, right. So, those operations which are being performed, and on the basis of that operation, if the state of object change, then those kind of operations will be modifiers. Many example you can take. Modifier means, again, if you are withdrawing some amount from your account, it is a kind of modifier operation, because status of object will change after that operation. And one operation is selector. If I want to see data, then how I will see that data? To see that data, I can create my method through which I can access the data. So, that is known as selector, and selector are those methods which are used for accessing data only, and they do not alter any stage of the object. So, object remain in the same state after applying the selector method on it. So, these are the 3 methods you can see on screen: manager, modifier and selector. As we discuss, data abstraction is one characteristic. We discussed that data and operation both are kept together. So, this is also known as data abstraction mechanism. We know that what kind of operation it can perform. So, we are concerned with the actual characteristic of it and associated operation of it, and how actually it is implemented, we are not concerned with it. And one more thing of the abstraction comes, that we choose those things only which are of our interest. Means, for a specific problem, it is not necessary that one individual object may have all the attribute which we may thought of. For example, as a student, you may have n number of attribute. For example, your name, your address, your father name, your date of birth, many more. In which semester you are studying, what is your percentage marks, what is the percentage of attendance, many things. But if you are solving one specific problem, let us say you are a student of a specific semester, BCA semester 3, how many classes you have attended in your C++ programming, that is the only specific problem you are solving. Maybe many of the attribute which we mention here will not be required for us. So, we will have only those attributes which are required for us. Is there any question?
कम्प्लेक्स सिस्टम जो आपने बताया था, वो कम्प्लेक्स सिस्टम के बारे में एक बार फिर से एक्सप्लेन कर दे तो समझ में आ जाएगी.
सर, आप मुझे एब्स्ट्रैक्शन एंड डाटा हेडिंग में डिफरेंस बताएंगे, क्योंकि दोनों तो सेम पर वर्क के लिए होता है, तो दोनों में जो मेन डिफरेंस है वो है क्या?
2 questions we are having here. Let me give little bit emphasis on these 2 questions. Both questions are obviously relevant in context of how actually we visualize our system. This is data and this is operation, and these two are combined together. We are saying encapsulated. Okay. Now we are saying that it is abstraction which make us think about specifically to our system. One example we took here, that a student may be thought of having so many attribute and data associated with it, and what are these? You tell, you will find n number of attributes. For example, name, enrollment number, program, semester, address, study center in your context, date of birth, and many more. The question arises that is really we need these all attributes to solve my specific problem?
No, sir.
No. So, there our concept of abstraction lies, right? Abstraction means what actually we need. We think our system that much only, because if we take one complex system, let us take aeroplane. Aeroplane is used for what?
Traveling one place.
For transportation, right? This transportation may be of two category, one may be cargo, another may be passenger. This object is managed by some company, right? It is having some pilot to fly it. Pilot is having control over the plane to fly it. It is having some more operation associated with it, source from where it will fly, destination to which it will go. It will have some more mechanism that you cannot enter in it without boarding pass. Okay? It may have some more very specific specification, that class of the ticket. So, these are what? These are some visible operations, visible objects which are going to interact with it. Some operation, some object, right? But this is the only thing that we have thought of about a plane. But is this the only thing about a plane is true? No. A plane may be thought of from an engineer perspective entirely different.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
What it will be? It will be having some wings.
Yes, a motor working and
It will be having some wheel.
yes,
It will be having some networking.
yes,
It will be having some communication system to control it. No, it will be having very clear cut specification about the seat and their spacing. It will be having some mechanism about how to ease out inside it. It will be having some security mechanism, many more, no? It is something which is randomly coming in our mind. So, this is about a complex system, but whenever we solve any problem, we do not solve the whole thing about that particular thing or whole problem of a world, no? If I am talking about driving, I talk about very specific requirement of it. I do not talk about that how actually brake works, how actually accelerator works, how actually seat are adjusted front and back. We are having very specific requirement, on that requirement only we talk about, right. So, in that context, if we see, abstraction of that particular problem is limited to that context only for me now, right. And as you talked about what actually complex system means, a complex system means in which many objects are there, they are performing many type of operations, they are having different kind of role associated with it. So, how we will deal such a complex system? It may be there are many subsystem involved in it and they are performing their operations, and it may be some dependent and some independent operations. Is it right? So, it is clear to you what actually abstraction means? In simple term, abstraction means I am not bothering about so many things about the specifics, I am bothering about what actually I need. that only I will declare, define in my program, nothing else. So, encapsulation in a general way is a mechanism through which we achieve abstraction. You might have heard about abstract data type. In data structure, you have learned abstract data type. So, from that, if you are talking about stack don't ask you about that how actually it is specific to implementation or how actually it is going to. You are concerned that it will perform push and pop operation, it will perform push and pop operation on some specific type of data to associated with that. So, that is abstract type. And here what we are doing, we are having our own set of data, our own set of operation, and we are making own abstract view about that particular object, right.
Yes, sir.
So, similarly, if you think about, let us say again one more object to clear this particular concept little bit more, let us say teacher. Teacher is an object.
Yes.
So, what you think about a teacher? You may think that a teacher is associated with a specific subject. You may think that teacher is having this many year of experience. You may think that teacher belong to this particular department. You may think that teacher is having some responsibility of doing research. You may think that teacher is having some responsibility of checking the answer scripts. It may be teacher is making assignment. It may be teacher is delivering a lecture. Many more things. But all these things you will think when you are solving one specific problem related to student and teacher involved in it? No. What you will encapsulate in your implementation? You will encapsulate the required data and associated operations, and that will be abstract view of a teacher for you. Is it clear? So, basically encapsulation, if you see on screen, encapsulation groups all pieces of an object into one neat package. Neat package means what? Very clear. Now, you are having very clear understanding about that object. This object will have these many data, this object will have these many operations. So, now your view about that particular system or object is clear to you. Now, let me come to access specifier. It is the mechanism through which we become sometime little bit liberal to provide access of our data to different level of accessibility. For example, private, public and protected. So, private talk about whatsoever private is there, whether it is private data or private operation, that is associated with that object only, and there is no accessibility of that outside. Even if some interface or method is private, that cannot be invoked from outside. Protected is having some level of accessibility in terms of reusability. Whenever we will discuss about or you will learn about inheritance, there the role of protected come little bit clear. Protected is having access to some specifics, not to all. It means I can access, but it is protected to me. So, I will access as well as I will provide to access to somebody which is of my interest, not to all. Public means all. Public means all, private means mine, protected means mine as well as limited access to some selected ones, right. In detail, whenever we will revisit our study material and we will write program in detail, we will learn more about how actually it is there. And one more thing, if you try to violate these rules, for example, you declare a private variable inside a declaration of the class and then you try to access it outside, it will be a problem. Now, class.
सर जो अभी आपने पढ़ाया है प्राइवेट पब्लिक एंड प्रोटेक्टेड, तो सर वो पब्लिक वाले मोड्स में प्राइवेट पे इंटीग्रेटेड क्यों नहीं होता?
We are talking about data centric application. Data is important to us. So far we talked that we are not going to provide access of data to anybody, but now we are talking about that there are some mechanism available, some techniques available or some access specifiers available through which we can liberalize access of data up to some level. So, what we are having three category, one category is private, private one is the for which we are talking so far that it is not accessible outside. public one. For that also we are talking public, we are talking in the context of interfaces or operations. So, our operations are public and those operations can be invoked by outside agents or other objects. Protected, we are talking one category which is in between these two. We are saying that protected is such a category which will be available to me, means I can access because it belong to me. In any case, private, public, protected all belong to that object, it can access inside it. But protected can be accessed by some other object, some other agency which are specifically selected, it means inherited. I do not want to introduce inheritance here, that is why I am just saying that some specific, some selected another category that may access to it, right, that is the protected one. Okay, so, we have discussed public, private, protected. I think it is clear to you that public is available to all, private is available to the object in which it is belong to or the class in which it is declared and defined, and protected is having a liberty to provide access to some selected ones. Now, can you tell that what is need of these different type of accessibility provisions?
ये हम इसलिए यूज़ करते हैं इफ़ अगर हम कोई भी ऐसे हमने प्रोग्राम बनाया या फिर हमारी कोई भी इन्फॉर्मेशन है हमारी, हम चाहते हैं सिर्फ हमारे जो सिलेक्टेड ग्रुप है या हमारे फ्रेंड्स हैं हम उन्हीं तक की अपनी मतलब कोई नोट्स हैं या फिर कोई भी हमारी थिंग्स हैं उन्हीं तक पहुंचाए, तो हम पब्लिक तो हम प्राइवेट यूज़ कर सकते हैं, प्राइवेट यूज़ करेंगे। पब्लिकली क्या है, अगर हम कोई भी हमारी इन्फॉर्मेशन है सब तक पहुँचाना चाहते हैं तो हम पब्लिक यूज़ करते हैं, इसलिए यूज़ करते हैं। और सर कुछ चीज़ें होती हैं हम नहीं शेयर करना चाहते हैं, हमारा एक ग्रुप है हम नहीं चाहते हैं कुछ हमारे फ्रेंड्स हैं वहाँ तक पहुँचे हमारी इन्फॉर्मेशन है जो भी है सर, इसलिए
बिल्कुल। देखिए आपने जो कहा ये सोच है, नहीं इस सोच से ये इम्प्लीमेंटेशन होता है हमारा। जैसे हम बात कर रहे हैं कि ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग हमारी जो है ये रियल लाइफ सिचुएशन को हमारे डिपिक्ट करती है। तो रियल लाइफ में भी आपके पास क्या होगा, कुछ ऐसी इन्फॉर्मेशन होगी जो आपकी प्राइवेट है, वो आप किसी से शेयर नहीं करना चाहते, नहीं, और कुछ ऐसी इन्फॉर्मेशन है जो आप एक स्पेसिफिक ग्रुप में तो शेयर कर सकते हैं, पब्लिकली आप नहीं चाहते कि कोई भी यूज करे, और कुछ ऐसी इन्फॉर्मेशन होती है जो पब्लिकली आप शेयर करते हैं। तो इस फिलॉसफी से निकल के ये तीन तरह के एक्सेस कंट्रोल या स्पेसिफायर्स के प्रोविजंस हैं, और ये तीनों हमें ये बताते हैं कि देखिए हमारा जो एप्लीकेशन बनने जा रहा है ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग या अप्रोच को यूज करके वो डेटा सेंट्रिक है। हम ये बात नहीं कर रहे हैं कि एल्गोरिदम कहाँ इम्प्लीमेंट होगा, हम ये बात नहीं कर रहे हैं कि हमारा मेथड और फंक्शन कहाँ डिक्लेयर होगा, कैसे उसको इन्वोक करेंगे। हम बात कर रहे हैं कि जो डेटा है हमारा उस पर किस तरह से ऑपरेशन होगा, और जब ऑपरेशन की बात कर रहे हैं तो वो उसको हम डिफाइन और इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहे हैं। तो जो डेटा है वही तो हमारा सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट कंपोनेंट है। तो अगर डेटा हमारा सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट कंपोनेंट है तो इसकी एक्सेसिबिलिटी पे कंट्रोल तो होना चाहिए। वही कंट्रोल देने के लिए ये तीन स्पेसिफायर्स हैं। वो वाला डेटा जिसको हम चाहते हैं कि कंट्रोल बहुत ज़्यादा ना हो वो पब्लिक जा सकता है, ठीक। वो डेटा जो प्रोग्राम का एक सेक्शन यूज करे, उसके अलावा कुछ और सेक्शन यूज करे जो उससे या तो जुड़ा हुआ है या फिर उसको आगे और बढ़ाना चाहता है, एक्सटेंड करना चाहता है, तब हम प्रोटेक्टेड यूज कर रहे हैं। और पब्लिक हम कह रहे हैं कि बिल्कुल सभी सेक्शन यूज कर सकते हैं, ठीक। तो इस तरीके से जब आप कोई भी प्रॉब्लम दोगे, जैसे मान लो कि कुछ आप इम्प्लीमेंट करना चाहते हो, फिर एक एग्जांपल हम लेते हैं बैंक अकाउंट का। तो बैंक अकाउंट में क्या चीज़ें एक्सेस पब्लिकली हो सकती हैं, दूसरे भी अगर ऑब्जेक्ट यूज करना चाहें उस अकाउंट नंबर को, जैसे मान लीजिए आपका अकाउंट नंबर है और उसको हम किसी और को एक्सेस देना चाहते हैं कि आपके अकाउंट में और पैसा ट्रांसफ़र कर सके, तो पब्लिक होगा। अगर हम उसको रिस्ट्रिक्टेड कर दें कि नहीं हम किसी और के साथ शेयर नहीं करेंगे, हमारी प्रोग्रामिंग इस तरह की हो जिस बैंक में है अकाउंट कि वो बैंक किसी को शेयर नहीं करेगा, सिर्फ आपके पास ही आपका अकाउंट नंबर रहेगा, तो ऑपरेशन नहीं होगा। उस ऑपरेशन को करने के लिए या तो फिर आप मेथड बनाएं और उस मेथड के थ्रू उसको एक्सेस के लिए प्रोवाइड करें, ठीक है। तो इन प्रोविजंस के साथ आप कर सकते हैं। एक छोटा सा प्रोग्राम आप देख लें जो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन आपके क्लास की होती है, कैसे होती है। क्लास लिखते हैं आप, क्लास के बाद क्लास का नाम, फिर जो डेटा आपको प्राइवेट सेक्शन में रखना है प्राइवेट सेक्शन में, पब्लिक में रखना है पब्लिक में, उसको फिर जो मेथड आपके हैं उनको इम्प्लीमेंट करते हैं आप यहाँ पे डिफाइन करके, और फिर ऑब्जेक्ट बनाते हैं और फिर उस ऑब्जेक्ट पे मेथड को इन्वोक करते हैं। ये कुछ हैं रेफरेंसेस जिनको आप फिर से देख सकते हैं, अपने स्क्रीन पे देख लें ये रेफरेंस। इन रेफरेंसेस को आप रिफ़र कर सकते हैं फर्दर स्टडी के लिए इन रेफरेंसेस के थ्रू। और कहीं ना कहीं अगर हम समराइज़ करें अपने इस डिस्कशन को तो हम ये कंक्लूजन निकाल सकते हैं या समरी कर सकते हैं कि ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग में जो कंसेप्ट ऑफ ऑब्जेक्ट है उसके अराउंड ही सारी प्रोग्रामिंग हमारी होती है। और कंसेप्ट ऑफ ऑब्जेक्ट ये कहता है कि आपको ऑब्जेक्ट बनाते समय ये ख्याल रखना है कि उस ऑब्जेक्ट की क्या स्पेसिफिक प्रॉपर्टी होंगी आपके लिए। वेग कुछ भी नहीं सोच सकते कि आपके दिमाग में आया कुछ किसी ऑब्जेक्ट के बारे में और n नंबर ऑफ एट्रीब्यूट आए, n नंबर ऑफ ऑपरेशन आए, उनकी कोई ज़रूरत नहीं। आपको क्या स्पेसिफिक चाहिए उसको सेलेक्ट करें इन टर्म्स ऑफ डेटा मेंबर, इन टर्म्स ऑफ ऑपरेशन, और फिर उनको आप यूज करें अपने प्रोग्राम में। ये अब्स्ट्रैक्शन हो गया। और डेटा और ऑपरेशंस को एक साथ रखने के लिए इनकैप्सुलेशन का कंसेप्ट आप यूज करते हो, और इन दो कंसेप्ट के साथ अपने प्रोग्राम्स को आप बनाइए। और इसके बाद आगे भी आप प्रोग्राम की रीयूजेबिलिटी की बात की जो बना हुआ है, तो उसके लिए इनहेरिटेंस का मैकेनिज़्म आता है। और भी आते हैं कि बहुत सारे इंटरफेसेस एक ही नाम से हमें देने हो तो क्या करेंगे, उसके लिए पॉलीमॉर्फिज्म का कंसेप्ट आएगा। पॉलीमॉर्फिज्म फिर अलग अलग कैटेगरी के हो सकते हैं। और फिर हम जो ये अब्स्ट्रैक्शन की बात कर रहे थे, अब्स्ट्रैक्शन तो बड़ा क्लियर है, हमारा अब्स्ट्रैक्ट डेटा टाइप में क्लियर है कि 2 प्लस ऑपरेशन इंटीजर का करेंगे, ठीक है। लेकिन जब हमें 2 स्ट्रिंग जोड़ना होता है तो भी प्लस हम करते हैं, तो उस प्लस का मतलब बदल जाता है। इट मीन्स ऑपरेटर को हम दूसरे पर्पज़ के लिए यूज कर रहे हैं, तो वो फिर हम स्टडी करते हैं ऑपरेटर ओवरलोडिंग में। तो ये सारे कुछ कंसेप्ट्स हैं जो ग्रेजुअली हम सीखते रहेंगे, और इन कंसेप्ट्स के अराउंड हम जब ग्रेजुअली बिल्ड करेंगे अपने प्रोग्रामिंग स्किल्स को, तो हम ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग की तरफ धीरे धीरे बढ़ेंगे और उसको सीख पाएंगे। ठीक है, विद दिस थैंक यू वेरी मच।